going to talk about 1920. And in 1920, there was nothing where we are but farms. Lower Paxton Township was one huge agricultural farming development. A lot of the businesses that were in Lower Paxton Township were actually in Linglestown. They had the high school, they had the School of Higher Education, they had the general stores, they had the feed stores. There were mills that were around Linglestown and of course in Lower Paxton Township. In late 1919, early 1920, a gentleman came, his name was Ingle. He came to Linglestown High School and he talked to 52 boys about going to State College and learning about an agricultural fair. Now these boys went to State College, they raised the money. Some of the money came from a gentleman called M.S. Hershey, who was known as the Chocolate King out of Derry Township. Other money came from citizens here in the township. Nevin Moyer was one of the gentlemen that helped support the boys. He was a teacher at the time. And the boys learned what it was to put on a fair. They got very excited and they came back to Linglestown and they decided they wanted to do a fair. Well, not to be undone, the girls from the high school also wanted to be involved. So instead of it being just pigs, cows, and chickens, it all of a sudden became sewing, knitting, flowers, decorating, and it grew and grew and grew. The first fair in 1920 was held at the Moyer Grove, which was Nevin Moyer's farm, which last month we learned about it as the Running Pump Farm. The second one was held up the street a little bit at Harry Witteroth's Flats. It was held there for a year. The first farm, the first year they had 4,000 people attend. The second year it grew a little bit more. It became the Linglestown Fair Association, and they outgrew Moyer's and they had to move to Harry's. And then for the next 9 years, it grew even more. And Judy Miller, I ran a blank, Kleinfeller, the Miller name has been in my head for weeks, grew up on that farm. And she's going to tell us what it was like to be connected with the great Linglestown Fair. It's yours.
I was very happy when Joe invited me to join you tonight and share some of my memories of the farm and of the fair. And the extra little plus for me tonight has been to see all these familiar faces come in. People that I haven't seen for a long time, and it's really neat to see them. So that's my bonus. The fair truly was in my backyard. We always referred to, we call it the track, we call it the fairgrounds. I'm going to walk to the fairgrounds. I'm going to run around the track. I'm going to take my horse and canter around the track 3 times. Very common place to identify and describe locations on the farm. Then I will have a little bit also to tell you, just to remind you about B.H. Engel. Joe mentioned this individual. He was the curriculum supervisor at the high school in Linglestown. And you know, when I passed that today, I thought, why doesn't somebody take this building and refurbish it? Because it's still there, right? It's a 3-story Linglestown.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something to do. Oh, in the mic, okay. I have a big mouth, but perhaps not big enough, huh? Anyway, when I first read that he had taken the boys to State College, it was like, wow, that's really neat. I know, you know, people still go there for Ag Days, and they came away from that visit to the fair with the knowledge that they really wanted to have a fair, kind of like they had at Penn State. ha. But when they got home, there was an individual, one of the students, whose name was Harry Ryan Pittman. Some of you may know him, some of you may be related to him. But he was the one who went to Mr. Engel and said, "You please help us run the fair, please help us have a fair." And he said, of course he would. He was most anxious to have the fair, so he very quickly gave his farm as the site for the first fair. And then you see there how it progressed. And when 1922 was the first year of my grandfather's, he offered, or the Fair Association proposed that he have the fair, and that's when it happened. And it flourished there for the next 9 years, I think. Our farm is about 200 acres. Most of it is in West Hanover. You see the land today. There's, are you going to show the whole video?
I'm going to show the side.
Okay. You can see that as the farm looks today. Think about, I think about the racetrack, and the track is still there. When Joe came down to talk about tonight, he said, could we go back and see where the fair was? And I said, absolutely we can. So we drove over to the racetrack. It seems very commonplace to me that it's still there, but not everybody is that. Not everybody has one in their backyard like that. But the fair has been a generation thing with us, and we looked at the land today, the usage of the land today. It's a beautiful farm. You can go on walks, and our granddaughters have gotten married on the fair grounds, and they're very, very lovely weddings, and it's kind of neat to see them do that. There were a number of permanent structures on the grounds of the fair. There was a big grandstand. We knew where it was because we would look around on the ground and see what might be there. Some kind of treasures. People are always looking for treasures. They think the people who were at the fair deposited a lot of treasures, and really I don't think they did. I've not gotten a hold of any treasures. A wonderful half-mile track. There was a stable for the harness horses, permanent stable. It was there because I remember the stable. We used to play there. There was a brightly lighted midway. There were cows and horses and pigs and chickens, and then pies and cakes and candy, restaurants under the tents, and a merry-go-round that was inhabited by brightly painted wooden horses. Number one of all these permanent structures for me has always been the carousel. The horses were purchased from the Philadelphia Toboggan Company that was in business for a very long time. They are not in business now, but they did produce beautiful carousel horses and very distinctive in their style. The track was a very nice track, the way it was made, the way it was kept, but it wasn't real dusty. And it was also the stage for a very important and notorious harness horse named Dan Patch. Does anybody in here remember Dan Patch? Anybody? No. See, why don't you remember Dan Patch? There's a lot of people, horse people today who, when you say Dan Patch, they say, oh yeah, wow, I know Dan Patch. But anyway, I'm sorry you guys don't know Dan Patch. But now you will. You see, now when somebody says, do you know Dan Patch? You can say, absolutely I do. I remember hearing about him. He was at the Linglestown Fair. The track was also the site of motorcycle races. These races were very popular. There was one day of racing that they predicted 40,000 people to show up. And indeed they did. Most of the attendance was around 10,000. And if you think of 10,000 people at the fair, it's like, wow, I can't believe that. Because Linglestown at that time had about, what, less than 1,700.
Yeah, 1,700 people were in Lower Paxton Township. So what you have to envision is in Lower Paxton Township in 1920, there were 1,700 people in the census. By the time the fair ended in 1930, it was 2,400. But 20,000 up to 40,000 people came here. And the only way in was the trolley, and by Model T or by horseback.
So getting back to the 10,000 and the 40,000, and that was a lot of people. But despite the numbers of people, the fair was purported as being the cleanest fair in the state, with no alcohol and no gambling. And it might be the presence of the Ladies' Aid Society of Winrick's Church, because they were at the fair a lot. They were selling corn soup, so they may have also been watching out for gambling and alcohol.
And they're still selling that corn soup, by the way, every spring and every fall. That's a free commercial.
The track was also the site for an airplane landing, which was quite unusual at that time. A lot of people didn't know a lot about airplanes, and here comes one to the fair. And there were the two men who brought it were stunt performers. And there's a picture of one of these pictures around here are the two performers, and they're walking and playing on the wings and holding onto the frame of the plane as it flies over the midway. The stables for the harness horses, I said, were standing after many years after the fair. And my cousin and I used to go play in the stables because it was a neat place to play. These were left behind. And these are, do you know what these are?
Numbers.
They're the numbers that identified what the horse's name was and who he was running for. And they go over their withers like that, and then you know. That's what these are. And these were original, but they're very dirty and very fragile at this point. But anyway, people would look for treasures that were left by the people who came to do that sort of thing. At the height of the popularity, and Joe said about the trolley played a big role in bringing people and things to Linglestown. My grandfather tells a story of, he got a call. Dad said, "Bill, you need to come up here because your pony just arrived on the trolley." And the pony was my dad's first pony. She was in a traveling crate on the trolley. So my grandfather hitched his mules to the wagon and drove to Linglestown to pick up this little black mare whose name was Petty. And he took Petty home from the trolley ride. The fair was an important fixture of Linglestown for many years. And though the proceeds derived from the fair, it was possible to build a $70,000 school building. Enrollment went from 23 to 120 in the high school. The establishment of a vocational school near Harrisburg was an important goal. And to that end, the Lieutenant Governor, his name was Beitelman, gave several talks. He came to the fair a lot to talk to the people about how important it was to have a vocational agricultural program. He did get it through the efforts at the fair. He didn't get it in Linglestown, but he did get it in Dauphin County. So that was quite good. I'm going to close here, and if you have questions, hoping that you do have some questions or something you'd like to discuss, we'll do that. But let me tell you my little ending of the fair. When the fair closed, people came again, took treasures. The merry-go-round horses were a target, you can imagine. And my grandfather got a call one evening telling him, Bill, you need to get over there to the fairgrounds because every car that goes through Linglestown has one of your horses on it. And so he quickly ran to the fairgrounds, saved the last horse left behind with a broken leg, and today that horse lives in our living room.
The fair got a lot of publicity. In 1920, there were 4 newspapers that covered the fair. It wasn't just Lower Paxton Township, it was all through Dauphin County, Lebanon County. People came from all over. We talked about M.S. Hershey for a minute. He sent his prize bulls over to the fair to be shown, but also for sale. And he also supported the boys in everything they wanted to do. It's amazing that this started with high school boys, and it worked up over the years. You'll notice the ribbons that were given out to the fair, and thanks to Nye's Nursery, we have a collection of the ribbons over here. After we're done, you can take a look at all the different ribbons. It wasn't just cows and pigs and 1,000 chickens. It was also everything you could imagine to eat. It was flower arrangements. Nye's Nursery won first prize on every different flower except for the arrangements. He came in second. You'll see the list there, and you can't read it, I know, but I do have copies of the articles out of the paper of all of the different categories and all of the winning, and each year more and more winners. They even had the tallest corn stalks. Excuse me. They had the horseless races. The picture in the middle shows a horse with the surrey. It also shows a horse with no rider. And they had mule races. When we went on to 1921, the fair was getting bigger. There were more people coming to it, and more stock came. Breeders from Lebanon County, from York County, came down. They came from Upper Dauphin County. They were all over, came in to little old Linglestown. This was the racetrack. They had a viewing stand where they would check the horses as they came through. You can see some of the people with their ponies, and they had their lambs, and I think, I'm not sure what that little boy has there, but it kept getting bigger and bigger. The chicken corn soup article on the side, they invited the Chamber of Commerce of Harrisburg, and the ladies from Winwick Church served them dinner with 75 cents a dinner. The soup was 15 cents and the ice cream was a nickel. They did $870. They actually covered their new building. There were ads in the paper. There were car races, motorcycle races. They had vaudeville shows. The thing that amazed me is in front of the grandstand, they showed movies of different farms through the state to help educate the people on different ways of doing farming. This is where 1924 hit 20,000 people. Now you say you have traffic on Linglestown Road today. Think about it. I just want to know how the trolley did it. This is an amazing story. Winrick Church had a tent at the very first fair where they sold corn soup. They continued it on, and in 1923, they built a building for the Ladies' Aid Building. Cost them $400, and they kept a list of how many hours each of the men of the church spent building the building. The person with the most hours, that put in almost 40 hours on it, was the pastor. Next came Nevin Moyer, had 17 hours, and he kept track of everybody all the way down to somebody spent a half hour. But they built the building for around $400, and they did over $800 in business, paid for the building, were happy with their $400 profit. And you think about it, in 1923, $400 was a lot of money. So they went from the tent to the building. But these ladies were smart. 3 of the 9 years that they were in the building, they rented it out to other people to put their exhibits in it, because not only could they sell soup on the side, they could make money from renting their building out. They also had local businesses, and a lot of the tents on the fairway, such as this one here from F.D. Wagner, had product to sell to the farmers and to the citizens. And here they had stoves. Those are cold stoves that they had on the midway. But what I thought was interesting, look back in the picture, look at the Model Ts lined up. They were lined up around the racetrack so at night they could turn the lights on. They had Cattle Day, of course. Cattle were a big thing at the fair, but also they had pigs. They had lambs, they had every imaginable thing. You can see the list is getting longer and longer with the prizes. This, I think, was both the Harrisburg paper, but when you start reading the names are the Coons family, okay? They had the Nye family, Bill Bailey, that was your grandfather, right?
My great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather. His name is throughout the articles for winning prizes. This is a wide shot of the fair. You can see the runway. You can't see it very well in this picture, but if your eyes are really good, on that tall tent far in the back is a Model T bus. I was able to blow it up and enhance it a little bit, but it doesn't show well on the big screen. But there were at least 3 Model T buses that helped cart people back and forth to the trolley. This is a little bit harder to see, it's fuzzy, but you can get an idea of the midway, the tents, and they actually had lights back there. The lights don't show up in the pictures. The people are standing on the hill, and I'm not sure what they're looking at, but I just thought that long dresses and a warm August or September day, and again, where the tents, and look at the size of that horse. Now let's talk about racing. They did it all. This ad was 5 days, August 17th through the 21st, and 5 nights. They had fireworks 2 of the nights. Their fireworks cost $500 for both nights. Do you know what the fireworks cost at Coons Park? $10,000. Money was a little different. Judy talked about the wing walkers. I could not get over this. This was actually one of the first years of the fair. I think it was 1923. And he walked on the wings, but the picture they had is him holding on to the landing gear. And next to it was one of the first planes the people in Lower Paxton Township ever saw. They heard about planes, but they never saw one up close. And they got to go up and see and feel and touch it. Just the size of the pumpkins back then and what they were judging. Again, I just am going past these articles, but just to see what was written up about this fair, it was not a small fair. In fact, if you think about the York Fair today attracting 100,000 people, a population of 40,000, the quilt was one of the prize-winning quilts. This article was in the Paxton Herald in the late 70s, I think it was 1979. And she was going to run it again for us last week, but they couldn't get the artwork.
lady's father's in that.
Really?
They're supposed to have won all the races except one.
What was his name?
Norman Carl.
Okay, I have in the article, Mr. Carl was the biggest winner throughout the 11 years of the fair. And the big prize was $5. The total prize package for all prizes awarded in the 1930 fair was $3,000. But if you got first prize for your roses, you got $3. Of course, back in 1930, at the start of the Depression, that was a lot of money. All right, this is the secret. None of you are seeing this map, but that's the fairgrounds today. On the red circle is the farm, and the close-up, the big green square. Am I right, Judy? Right here?
Yes.
That's the track. That's where everybody went. Here's Beaver Creek. So we know it's half in our township and half in the other, but we're not going to tell West Hanover anything. Lower Paxton is claiming everything. This is it today. This was actually last week. And just so you know, the little light in the top is looking down on the fair. And there's the horse.
I should tell this.
Now we want to know which of you has any of the horses. We're looking for those horses. We're still trying to find the N22 horse, but this is more important. The two ads on the side are very interesting. The one is 1938, and they were still calling it the Linglestown Fairgrounds 8 years after the fair was done. They were still renting it out. Now they did it for the Dauphin County Democratic Stag Party at that time, but it was still rented. And the ad in 1933 was telling you where the square dance was, and it told you to go 3 miles past the Linglestown Fairgrounds. It was always a big part of this area. And now we're open for questions.
Well, this might sound like a silly question. Oh, do you have the recipe for that corn chicken soup? Could you publish that? Because that'd be really cool. And like, have you ever considered like doing like a little like museum for like all the history of the township? Just a question.
Answering that.
Yes. Each of our presentations is being videoed, and the first two are up on the Lower Paxton Township webpage, okay, for the commission. We have our own section. When you go to Lower Paxton webpage, there's a section for the commission, and you can see the first presentation, the second presentation, and probably in about 2 weeks, her presentation will be up there. And we're also going to be at sometime in the future on the Lower Paxton Township TV station. It'll be running back and forth. And we are working with other associations. We just had a meeting with the Derry Township Historical Society, and we work closely with Dauphin County Historical Society. Did that answer your question?
And what about the soup recipe?
Do you really want to fight with the Ladies' Aid Society of the Winrick Church?
Today around here.
Twice a year. You can go there and buy it at St. Thomas UCC, spring and fall.
Thank you very much. I want to have it.
It started in 1920, ended in 1930. Why did it end? Is there a reason that just wasn't
Just not the interest in it. And I think my dad had he got together a group of people to try to help him save it, but it had lived its life, I think.
Yeah, the Depression. After the war, they tried to start it up again. There was somebody that tried to start it then, And by then, the cost was just too high. There's articles in the paper where there were meetings, and the people, even around Linglestown, wanted to have it.
Makes me wonder how, back in that day, they got the word out to get that many people here. I mean, now we have the internet, and
I
it's
do
hit
not know the answer to
television.
that one. No, I don't know the answer.
I know, no one does. It had been word of mouth.
Newspaper.
Became
No,
Pennsylvania
newspaper.
Farm Show.
That's true.
The farm show.
Farm show.
Back there? Question on that one. Here's, yes?
Hi, Judy.
Oh, it's Wendy.
I don't know if you can answer. Twin Brooks Horse Show
Yes.
for many years was there on the property. Do you know the time frame of that?
Oh, indeed I do, because I was instrumental in the horse show. My cousin and I decided we wanted a horse show. And so my grandfather built us a little ring, and then a little bigger the next year. And it was in 1952, I think, is when we started Twin Brooks. And then it lived on our farm for a while, and then moved down 39 a little closer to Hershey in that direction.
And I saw a 13-year-old picture of Judy and her horse, and I wish I had brought it.
Oh, I'm glad he didn't.
We may be doing a horse talk in another few months. Other questions? Yes?
At one time, when I went to a couple of races down here, you bought tickets as you crossed the bridge. There used to be cabins up on the left. Are they still there?
They are not there. I do know they used to be there, but I never saw them. They were gone before.
Yeah, there were about 2 or 3 there.
Now, the house, or that building made by the Ladies' Aid, that was there for a good while.
Yeah. They're not there anymore, though.
The cabins weren't Pittman cabins, were they?
No. I was too old.
I don't know whose they were. I don't
There were 3
know.
cabins there anyway. 2 anyway.
People had, I don't know what property they were on.
Okay.
And the Boy Scouts came in for a bunch of jamborees over the years.
Yeah,
They built a road down there through,
but that's where the jamborees were.
right,
Mhm.
Okay.
back on the farm. And her dad rented it out on the weekends too for picnics and such, but I remember going over and helping cleaning up.
There was another question back there?
I'm thinking of the number of people there and the number of days that the fair was held. Did they only come for the day, or were there places in Linglestown to stay overnight?
I don't believe there were places to stay overnight. Does anybody?
Well, the Eagle had a few
Yeah, the
rooms.
Eagle had a few, but that would have been
There was one other hotel, too.
not quite 10,000
Yeah.
beds.
These were people that would come for the day, and they came back the next day. The fair, in some years, the fair lasted 4 days, and some years it was 3 days. And a lot of times, the bulk came on a certain day. There was a kids' day where the kids got in free, and you would get a lot more that day. But the thing is, they didn't pass out tickets for the free days. So they would have had maybe 20,000 paid people, but they didn't know how many were free. But no, they came and went each day, and the fair didn't end at dark. It went on after dark. So think about driving Linglestown Road with all those people after dark. Go ahead.
Is this still a farm today?
Yes.
Oh,
And somebody
absolutely.
lives there?
We have 142 acres,
Oh, okay.
and my husband and I live there, and our one daughter and her family live there. And we have one property that we have rented since my parents died. It was their house, so we have renters in that one.
May I ask approximately where it is?
A mile and a half east of town.
Nature's Way Landscaping.
Nature's Way Nursery has a big sign. Right before you get to the red light where the new high school is. That's where we are.
Well, Mill Race Road, that's, we have a big fence, we don't want people to come.
There are no trespassing signs, even though Jim says nobody reads them.
Well, it's amazing the people that get that come in and drive on our what we call our little paths. We had two this last summer got bogged down back there. So we put cones up and signs up, but people look at the signs and say, oh, I guess that doesn't mean me. Let me go back here and see what's back here.
This is Judy's husband.
But what is amazing is that high school boys and high school girls started this. And they stayed with it throughout the 10 years. Her father was, how old when it started? He was 8, 7? 7. And he was 18 when it ended. And he was there every single year, involved with it. And he became very involved in the last few years with the rest of the high school. It was a learning experience. Yes?
Where is the high school? And you said the building's still there?
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Well, the fire station, okay, was the Linglestown High School at one point. The old fire station on Linglestown Road. Well, the 3-story house was higher education. That was, high school was never a 3-story house, was it, Bill? Institute. St. Thomas Institute is the 3-story house in Linglestown. And that was never the high school. The high school was always, it was first and foremost in the firehouse, but then in, I think, 1935? Yeah, 1935 it moved to where, on Old Jonestown Road. Yeah, 6003 Old Jonestown Road, which is now the Love and Christ Church and the soccer. It's right next door to Amp. Well, it's not Amp anymore. I showed my age, didn't I? Yeah, this was Amp.
This building for 25 years.
Yeah.
1969 to 1984.
Well, see, Amp could stay in business longer because the township bought the building. You wish. Any other questions? Yes?
Will the fairground be preserved for future development, not like the property over in the West Shore that they're trying to claim eminent domain for the school?
They gave up.
That's been, that is saved now. That farm is saved. If we have anything to do about it, which we don't have a lot to do about it, we will work with the family and try to preserve it. It is a very strong part, but it is their property. And they have a right to do with it what they want.
What's the zoning now? It's agricultural.
Agricultural.
And see, we have our property in a land grant.
Trust.
Land trust, I'm sorry. Yeah.
There's very little farmland left. If you look at the zoning map for Lower Paxton Township, there is very little left.
I just want to, have you ever considered doing tours of it? You know, just like open it up like one. Probably not.
I'll tell you a little story. I begged them last week when I was there to let me drive my car back through so I could get those pictures. And he was hooking up his tractor to pull me out when he was sure I wasn't going to make it back.
He made it back. He did. He told me where he was headed, and I said, well, you try it. Take your phone.
I took my phone and I prayed.
I think the only access to the farm is right through the big wetlands by Beaver Creek there in Spring Creek, so I think we're okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Another question.
Sure.
When will the next stockholders meeting be for the fairground?
You know,
Check my calendar for that one.
it is amazing. I have to say, on the Facebook page, we have been putting up a lot of pictures, a lot of articles out of the paper, and we've been getting a lot of feedback from everybody. And the biggest thing has been, why can't you bring it back? But I'm afraid that ship has sailed. I think we're pretty much done.
Oh, okay. I just said to Joe, I wanted to thank you all for coming, for responding.
Oh, the night was clear, and the stars were shining, and the moon came up, so quiet in the sky. All the people gathered round, and the band was playing. I can hear them now, singing "Come Through the Ride." Then we danced all night to the fiddle and the banjo. Their drifting tunes seemed to fill the air. So long ago, I still remember how we fell in love at the Linglestown fair. You were dressed in blue, and you looked so lovely, the gentle flower of a small town girl. You took my hand, and we stepped to the music with a single smile. You became my world, and we danced all night to the fiddle and the banjo. Their drifting tunes seemed to fill the air. So long ago, I still remember how I fell in love